At 6:40 this morning, the air's still biting cold. You step outside. The Carolina wren is already calling near the brush pile, but there is a crow on the fence post. It doesn't move. It watches you drag the recycling bin to the curb. I used to think I understood exactly what was happening in those moments. I was wrong. Here's what I believed for the first 2 years I lived in this house. I believed the crows in my neighborhood were ambient, background. Present the way the telephone wire is present, part of the environment, not specific to me. I'd see 3 or 4 of them working the oak tree at the back of the yard, hear them somewhere down the street, and go about my morning. Then I started reading the research on what crows actually know, and what I found is that the crow on your fence post is not watching the yard. It is watching you. It has been watching you long enough to have a working profile of who you are, your face, your movements, your behavior near its territory. And somewhere nearby, other crows share that profile, because the one on the fence post has been sharing it. I've been watching the crow family I think of as the Hatfields for about 3 years now. 3 or 4 birds depending on the season. They work the same quarter mile of this neighborhood from roughly the same loose territory. For a long time I thought they were watching my yard. I know now they were watching me. Those are different things. Welcome to the channel. Today we're going through 7 things the crows in your neighborhood already know about you. Things they've been tracking, sharing with each other, and using to make decisions you probably didn't know they were making. Stay until the end. Number 7 is the one I keep coming back to, and I'm still not entirely sure I have the right words for it. Subscribe before you leave. Number 1. Crows recognize individual human faces. Not humans in general, your face specifically. I thought this was overblown when I first read it. It is not overblown. The research on this comes largely out of the University of Washington. A team led by Dr. John Marsluff has been studying crow facial recognition for about 15 years now. And it is some of the most carefully designed animal cognition work done in the last 2 decades. Here's what the study showed. Crows can identify individual faces at distances of up to 200 feet. They hold that recognition for years, not months, years. They maintain it through seasonal changes, different clothing, different contexts. When researchers wore distinctive masks during crow trapping, the birds afterward specifically targeted those masked faces, not neutral masks, not random researchers. The specific faces that were present when something alarming happened to them, not a general response, not an instinct, not random sensitization to humans, a specific, lasting, individual-level memory of a face that belongs to you. And here's the part that stayed with me. Some of the crows in those studies had never been trapped themselves. They learned to scold the threatening face from other crows who had been. 12 months later, they were still doing it. This holds across American crows, fish crows along the Atlantic coast, and common ravens, where corvid cognition research from UCLA and other institutions goes even deeper. Blue jays, corvid relatives sharing some of the same cognitive architecture, show individual recognition behaviors too, though the research on jays is less developed. There is a bird in your neighborhood right now that has been building a picture of your face since the first time you walked past it. It knows what you look like from above, from 200 feet, in a crowd. The oldest Hatfield, the one with the slightly ragged tail feather, has a cleaner mental image of me than most of my neighbors have ever bothered to form. I only figured that out by paying attention. Number 2, they don't just remember your face. They've filed it. Crows sort the humans in their territory into rough behavioral categories. Neutral, you're present, you're not a threat, you've been noted and set aside. Safe, you're predictable, you've been consistent, you may leave food, the file reflects that. And then there's the 3rd category. I'll come back to that. What matters here is that this categorization uses what researchers call episodic memory, the ability to remember specific events tied to specific individuals, not just that is a human. That is the person who slowed down near the holly bush when the fledgling was on the low branch last April. They remember the moment. They remember the face attached to it. They update accordingly. The American robin that flushes every time you cross the yard is not afraid of all humans. It has a flight initiation distance, the gap at which a bird decides to fly rather than hold its position. That's calibrated specifically to how you've behaved near it. The chickadees at my back feeder, the Tuesday couple, who've been visiting for 4 winters now, have learned that my movements near the Japanese maple are slow and predictable. They hold their position when I come outside in a way they don't when anything changes. Crows take that same process and extend it further. Every time you step outside, there may be a crow somewhere in the surrounding tree line, noting that interaction against everything it already knows about you. 3 winters into paying real attention, I know I am not anonymous in my own yard. The Hatfields had a working model of me before I had any idea the model existed. Number 3. They share that file with the rest of the neighborhood. Here's where it gets significantly more complicated. Crows are among the most socially wired birds on the continent. They live in extended family groups. They maintain layered communication systems, and they practice what researchers call social learning, the transfer of specific information from experienced individuals to others who weren't even there. Not general behavioral patterns. Specific information about specific things. In follow-up research from the University of Washington, Marsluff's team found that crows who had identified a specific masked face as a threat passed that identification to other crows who had never been near the researcher. Those birds learned to respond to the specific face, not a general alarm, not a class of threat. That face, transmitted through the group. What this means for your yard is this: if a crow in your territory has formed an assessment of you, other crows in the same family likely share it. Not because they verified it themselves, because someone in the group told them. A typical crow clan covers somewhere between 1/2 mile and 2.5 miles of territory. They roost together in winter, sometimes hundreds of birds in the same stand of trees, and information about local conditions almost certainly crosses family lines at those gatherings. I want to be honest about what we don't know. The exact reach of transmitted threat information beyond the core family group is genuinely uncertain. What I can tell you is that the crow on your fence post is not operating alone. It is a node in a network, and you are in that network whether you knew it or not. The house sparrows and European starlings in your yard respond to crow alarm behavior the way birds respond to a drill, fast, and without waiting for their own confirmation. When the Hatfields move low and fast off the oak, every bird in my yard is gone in under 10 seconds. Information moves quickly through a backyard. Crows are often where it starts. Number 4. You may already have a file, and you helped write it. I want you to sit with this for a minute, because this is the one that made me uncomfortable when I thought it through. 3 springs ago, I found a young crow on the ground near the back fence. It looked disoriented. I thought I was going to help. I didn't touch it. I've since learned enough to know you don't move a bird unless there is no other option. But I leaned close. I reached toward it. I was there for maybe 90 seconds. What I didn't know at the time was that a crow on the ground is almost always being watched by the rest of the family from the trees above. And for 6 weeks afterward, the Hatfields would flush from the yard. The moment I stepped out the door, remember that 3rd category I mentioned earlier? The one beyond neutral and safe? Here's where it gets uncomfortable. I hadn't just scared them. I had put myself on the threat list, and I had handed them the pen. This is not permanent. It is behavioral data, and behavioral data gets updated by subsequent behavior. But the research from Cornell and the University of Washington is specific about what puts a human in the threat category. Sustained eye contact at close range, approaching without giving them an exit, moving quickly near a nest, or handling any bird in any way, even when you were just trying to help. None of those things feels threatening from the inside. That's what I need you to hear. Most of what ends up in a crow's file on you comes from instincts that are genuinely good. You see something that looks like it needs help, and you move toward it. Crows don't evaluate intentions. They evaluate what happened. The Hatfields stopped treating me as a threat. It took about 3 months of being predictable and slow and consistent near the yard. Nothing sudden, nothing reaching, for the flush behavior to stop. They came back. That's worth knowing before you feel too bad about anything. Number 5. The distance is a number, and the number changes. Research suggests bird behavior use a specific term, FID, flight initiation distance, the gap at which a bird decides to leave rather than hold its position. For crows, that number is not fixed across all humans. It is calibrated to the specific individual approaching. Studies of urban crow populations consistently find that birds in regular contact environments have shorter average FID than rural crows. They've learned over time that most humans passing through aren't a direct threat. But inside that average, individual birds maintain individual thresholds for individual people. The crow that lets you walk within 10 feet without flushing is not comfortable around humans in general. It has made a specific calculation about you based on your history near it. There's something worth sitting with in that. Because the number is measurable. Because it changes over time. And because if you start paying attention to it, you will notice a negotiation happening that you didn't know you were part of. 2 years ago, the eldest Hatfield would be gone before I made it to the center of the yard. This past fall, she was on the fence post nearest the suet cage when I came outside, and she held her position through my full crossing of the lawn. I got within 12 feet before she shifted to the far post. I stopped. She turned one eye toward me the way crows do when they want a clear look at something close. I didn't move. She went back to what she was doing. I had earned 12 feet of tolerance without knowing I was working on it. That is not an accident. That is a slow negotiation between two animals living in the same small territory with very different timescales, trying to figure out what the other one means. I find it hard to look away from the fact that it shows up as a measurable number in the data. If you saw last month's video on how cardinals use alarm calls to map your yard, you know how sensitive this network is. But with crows, the network isn't just mapping the yard. It's mapping you. Number 6. Some crows leave things for the people they trust. This is the one that gets dismissed as anecdote until you look at the documentation. There's a well-known account from Seattle, a family that fed the crows in their neighborhood consistently, over years. Over time, the crows began leaving objects in the dish where the food was placed. A button, a small piece of twisted metal, a miniature plastic traffic cone. 47 objects over about 2 years. Researchers at the University of Washington who studied this and similar corvid gift-giving cases are careful about what they claim. The behavior occurs specifically in long-standing individual relationships, not toward humans who feed crows in general, but towards specific people in specific sustained histories. It doesn't happen early, and the objects have no nutritional value, which means whatever is driving the behavior is something other than simple exchange. I want to be careful here. I'm not going to tell you that crows have generosity in the human sense. I'm not going to tell you they don't. What the research shows is that in some mature relationships between specific crows and specific people, something in the bird's behavior shifts. The relationship is old enough, stable enough, and specific enough that it starts to express itself differently. Cardinals don't do this. Robins don't do this. Cooper's hawks absolutely do not do this. This appears to be specific to corvids, and specific to corvids who have moved a human from the neutral or threat category to something else over a long enough period of time. I've been leaving peanuts near the back fence for 8 months. Nothing yet. I'm paying attention. Number 7. I've saved this one for last, because it has to be last. This past March, cold morning, maybe 40 degrees, the yard light still on at 6:30, one of the Hatfields landed on the fence post nearest the suet cage. I was at the kitchen window with my coffee. She looked at the feeder. Then she turned her head the way crows do when they want to bring one eye forward for a clear look at something close. And she looked at the window, not at movement behind the glass. At the window directly. For maybe 25 seconds, then she took a peanut from the post where I'd left them the night before, and she was gone. I know what the science says is happening. Crows are acutely aware of human observation. Research in corvid cognition describes this as something close to a theory of mind, an awareness that other animals have awareness, that there are eyes watching, that the shape behind the glass is connected to the food on the post. That's the documented version. Science calls it theory of mind. But science doesn't tell you what it actually feels like. To stand at the window, to be looked at by something with 14 years of life ahead of it, something that was here before you, something that knows your face better than your neighbors do, something that has been building a picture of your face since before you knew the picture was being taken. I don't have great words for what it is to be remembered by something that had no obligation to remember you. There's a crow in your neighborhood that has been watching you since you moved in. It knows your face. It has something like a file, a record built from specific moments you've had near it. And somewhere in that record, between the oak and the fence post and the line where its territory ends, is an entry for the person who comes outside in the morning and sometimes stands at the window. You didn't know you were being filed? You were. Tell me, in the comments, has a crow, or any other bird, ever done something that made you feel like it knew specifically who you were? Tell me the story. I want to hear about it. I read every one. I'll see you in the next one.